Here we are in a new month and a new system. As we go into this month, we're talking about the reproductive system. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Minke. This is Minke Wellness, and we've been doing our wellness journey for the year. We're on our 6th month, and as we've been going through month to month, we've been talking about the different body systems, and the goal is to have a better understanding, an ability to consciously participate in our wellness. I think we need to know what's going on in these body systems in order to have a more conscious participation. So I'm all about consciousness. I think the power of our consciousness is the most powerful thing that we can use to bring about in our life in general, but it's certainly in our healing process. It's certainly something that we can engage in, and it's going to be a powerful help. That's what I call the placebo effect. Our consciousness participating in our wellness and our health and healing. Why not, right? It's free. So that's a powerful part of what I'm teaching in my wellness course here. So in order for us to be conscious of the reproductive system, we kind of have to take a step back. To every system we've been talking about, we need to take a step back and understand what the system is about. Why are we doing it? Okay, so we've been talking about as we're going on our journey, we talked about we started out with the respiratory system, then we talked about the circulatory system, the digestive system, elimination system, and the skin. Now we're talking about the reproductive system. This one is different. It's hard to talk about the reproductive system as one size fit all because we have two different types of systems, right? We got a male and a female system. So let me show you some diagrams. If you don't want to look at any of the parts, this is all diagrammatic, nothing particular graphic. But I'm going to show it, just like I've done the whole time, anatomy and physiology. Let's look at the reproductive system anatomically, physiologically, and talk about how to keep things healthy. Now we're going to apply our wellness strategy to the reproductive system just like we have to the rest of it. So the wellness strategy is stop poisoning ourselves, flood the body with nutrients, and manage our stress. Now we can apply that to the reproductive system. So we stop poisoning the reproductive system. We have to flood the reproductive system with nutrients. Now, there's going to be nutrients that are more specific to the reproductive system, and then we have to manage stress associated with the reproductive system. And the stress associated with the reproductive system is going to be a significant factor in having a healthy reproductive system. Now, before I go on, let me say some of you might have already tried to tune me out. Oh, I don't care about the reproductive system because I'm past that age, or I don't want to make any more babies. And you're right. Reproduction means making babies. That's what we're talking about. But in order to be healthy, you want a healthy reproductive system all the way to the end of your life, because you don't want your reproductive system to kill you at the end, right? You don't want cancer or something or degenerative processes happening in your reproductive organs. And then you say, well, all those organs are ripped out. No, they're not. Not all your organs are ripped out. Even if you had a massive hysterectomy, you still got some of the reproductive system in there, and your body is still geared physiologically for that. So you need a healthy reproductive system no matter what your age, no matter what your situation, no matter what your circumstance. Even if you're not going to have any babies, you still need a healthy reproductive system, okay? So please understand, this is a basic biological part here, and we need to take care of it. Okay, so we have male and female. And okay, so here's the bigger picture, right? So female body, different than the male body, okay? And so if we go to kind of do the little circles, the cut-ins or whatever. So here's the female reproductive system. Most of the parts are internal. So let's go over these parts a little bit. The vagina, the cervix, right? So the cervix is that little gatekeeper to the uterus. So we want to prevent anything from getting into the uterus and hold the baby in once it's, that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So the vagina to the cervix, the uterus, the fallopian tubes, and the ovaries. That's all internal. Out at external, you don't see a whole lot, but there's the labia and the arousal centers, the clitoris. Then we've got the male system, which is all external. The penis and the testes. The testes inside the little skin sac, which is called the scrotum, and then pretty much the only internal thing is there's a tube that goes in there to keep everything going, but the prostate sits right underneath the bladder, and here's I'm just going to point out just the anatomy from the side view. Here's the rectum, okay, and so the prostate is pretty much in between the bladder and the rectum, especially if we produce, tilt the pelvis a little bit. So we're going to be talking about the how the prostate for the men gets squeezed in between the rectum and the bladder, especially if we sit a lot. How many men are sitting a lot? And so we're talking about keeping a healthy prostate, and that is going to have a large part to do with our posture and circulation. Okay, so everything needs good circulation, right? Okay, so the more arousal part for the men is at the tip of the penis, and so there's this. What are you talking about, arousal? Well, there's arousal. It's that's part of the biology also, and that's the drive for sex, right? So not only do we have a physical contact arousal system, but then there's the part about arousal that happens in the mind. Okay, so we're going to talk about the difference between the sexual interest, which is libido, right? The sexual interest for men and the sexual interest for women. We'll talk a little bit about that this month, okay? So we're going to touch on a lot of stuff this month. I'm really going to take a wellness approach to the reproductive system. So yes, we're talking about fertility. Yes, we're talking about reproduction, making more, which is to say a baby. But we're also going to talk about sex and the libido and long past the biological reproductive components. Okay, so that's all going to be lumped into the reproductive system this month. So follow along because we're going to talk about some really interesting stuff, right? Okay, so that's the basic anatomy parts. Now you might wonder, let me go over these anatomy parts just because they do have some functions. I'm going to start with the female part again. Okay, so the vagina as the birth canal, it also receives the penis. And so the vagina is actually the wall of the vagina is pretty tough, okay, and because it has to deal with some friction. It also is very elastic because it has to expand and stretch to have the birth canal to allow the baby to come out. So it's pretty amazing tissue in there. And it also has a secretion. So the secretion in there acidifies the vagina to protect this opening. This is an opening to the outside, and it protects that opening, that area, from anything that comes in. So it has a lot of antibacterial, antimicrobial elements that go in there, a lot of immune system elements, but it's very acidic. And one of the ways that it prevents the growth of yeast and all the rest of it is for the vagina to be very acidic. And it also kills sperm on contact. There's in about 20 minutes. Sperm is dead in 20 minutes in the vagina if it doesn't have if it stays acidic. In other words, so some people are infertile. They talk about infertility. Some people are infertile because the vagina stays acidic. Well, how does it not get acidic? Well, that's the cervix. Every in response to the cycle of the hormones for the month, and we'll talk more detail about this, the estrogen is produced, and estrogen goes up and down, so there's a lot of variation in hormones for women, and we'll talk about that. But the cervix responds to estrogen and produces mucus that flows. That mucus that flows out, when it's not flowing, it's a plug, and it blocks the channel that goes into it blocks this channel that goes into the uterus, and so it prevents anything from contaminating the uterus because we don't need anything in the uterus if we're not, if nothing is happening. And so what happens is there's a plug there, and when the mucus, when the estrogen is produced, it causes the mucus to flow. That mucus has two things. One, it produces a swimming channel for the sperm to get through the cervix, but it also alkalizes the vagina, and it helps to keep the sperm alive. So that's where we're working together here to the same purpose, right? This is a very huge biological drive. That's why it's pleasurable, because there's a biological drive to reproduce, to make more. You have to realize that when we're talking about reproduction, this is the first time we're really talking about something outside of the individual person, okay? It's not just about you and me individually. It's like, oh, I'm just going to take care of my wellness. No, now we're talking about something bigger, right? It takes two to tango on this one. It takes the male and the female to make a baby. And if we don't do that, the whole species is gone in one generation. Gone. It's that serious, right? This is a huge deal. The human race completely ends, if a male and a female doesn't get together and make a baby, okay? And so this is big, important stuff, but it's the first time that we're talking about something wellness related that's not totally connected to us individually. Now we're talking about society. The whole society has to be involved in this process, right? Society starts with the man and woman getting together and creating family. That's the core element of society, family unit. And then from there, we go out from there. So I think we've lost touch with that at some level, okay? So fertility, maybe in our culture, fertility is an evil word. We want to, oh, hell, I don't want any more babies. Get rid of the babies. It's like, well, that's going to be a real interesting discussion in about 80 years. There'll be nothing left. Okay, so back to the parts, and then here's the uterus. The uterus is the lining of the uterus. The endometrium swells up in response to hormonal signals to produce a nice, warm, welcoming place for the baby, for the egg. Now, the egg is produced in the ovaries. It alternates every month. We'll talk more about this whole cycle. The ovary releases an egg, and it travels down the tube. A lot of times for fertilization, the sperm is actually waiting for the egg, and so it fertilizes, it rolls down, and it's being swept down the tube, and then it implants into that's what the fertilization, as soon as that sperm hits the egg, yay, we've got reproduction. The reproduction has been successful. Now, in order for that reproduction to continue to be fully engaged, we've got to have the implantation and the growing of the baby and the birth. So there's a little bit of a long process there. It takes 9 months. Okay, so now we'll switch over to the male parts. And like I said, most of it's internal. Go look at the prostate here, sits right underneath the bladder. The prostate makes semen, makes the liquid, and that's actually nutrients for the sperm. It keeps the sperm alive, and so that's what the purpose of that is. It makes that fluid. And then they've got the tube again that's just going to get this sperm from it gets the sperm from the testes where they're produced and the epididymis where they're stored, and then they travel up here to the vas deferens or the ductus deferens, and then it joins in here. So then now here's the big question: why is the male testes outside the body? Is it necessary? It just seems so kind of awkward, right? Especially for guys with jeans, wearing jeans. Who ever thought of that? God did not think that one through, right? Because it's really hard to have the testes squished in there. They got nowhere else to go. There's a biological reason for that. The DNA is wrapped so tight in sperm that it has to have a lower temperature. And so the entire system is geared around that. And so the whole biology, the whole structure of the human body is wrapped around, if you will, the sperm and the DNA wrapped around the sperm that's being produced in the testes. So that has to be done outside the body. And so temperature makes a dramatic effect on fertility for the men, for male. That's why if you sit too long in a hot tub, you'll be infertile, at least for that time. Now, I don't think that that's going to be birth control because it's not that clean. But okay, so those are the male parts. Female parts, male parts, we got to take care of both those. And so anyway, as we go in the rest of this month, we're going to talk about the elements of stress. Now, let me point out again that stress is going to be a big factor in the reproductive system, because if I'm running for my life, I don't care about reproduction. So the stress response shuts down the reproductive system, both male and female. If I'm dying over here of malnutrition, I'm not worried about reproducing. I can't possibly support the life of a baby, so why should I bother? Okay, so in other words, as I age, one of the reasons that we stop becoming fertile is not because, it's just time to give up. No, it's because the body's too weak to make a baby. It's too weak to support the whole reproductive system. So the reproductive system is almost a benchmark. It really is an indicator for how healthy we are. If our libido is dropping, okay, so we're going to talk a lot about libido and some things about the sexuality, and I hope this is going to be helpful to you. I'm going to take a very wellness approach about this. It's in our culture, it seems like we're not allowed to talk about sex and all the rest of it, but I just think that we're doing a great disservice to ourselves and each other when we can't have a discussion about this. So we're going to talk about sexuality and sex and sexuality and arousal and things like that. How is that different from a man, and how is that different from a female, and all the different assaults that we get from our culture and our society associated with fertility and reproduction. It's like, wow, there's a lot of things that we need to consider to keep a healthy reproductive system. And so I think this is going to be a fun discussion. It's a very vital, a very important part of our lives, and to keep it healthy all the way through. So like I said, I know you don't want to have a baby at 90, I get that, but wouldn't it be nice to still have the interest in sexual interest all the way through to our old age and our golden years, right? And so, yes, I get it that we don't want to have a baby all the way through, but we need to keep a healthy reproductive system no matter what. Okay, so that's the basic biological overview. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about the philosophical elements of the reproductive system, a little bit more about that. But we have some anatomy and physiology that we need to take care of. Now, it's going to be a little difficult to talk exclusively about, male and female in the reproductive system. In other words, it's going to have a hard time one size fit all. So some of the material you might say, well, that's male, I don't need to look at it. Oh, that's female, I don't need to look at it. I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and pay attention to the whole month, to both sides, so that we can have an understanding, a little bit better understanding about what each other's going through. Now, obviously, I'm a male, so I'm going to tell you more from the male perspective. And so you females out there that are on my wellness program here, why don't you chime in? And if I'm saying things off, or if you got a better perspective on something, please let me know about that, because, I'm only on one side of this equation. All right. Happy wellness one day at a time. We'll see you tomorrow.